you yourself had entered beauty contests.
Yes.
I'm a junior at West Virginia University.
So this was, what, fun for you both to have her do this?
It was the most wonderful time of my life.
Their mysterious reluctance to talk with the Boulder police, or anyone for that matter, only fanned the flames. Rarely have I felt so troubled in the early days of a story. But New Year's Day, everything changed. The Ramseys appeared on national television and ignited a firestorm.
The police said a couple of days ago, as a way of reassuring Boulder residents, that there is no killer on the loose, that everything is under control.
The killer is on the loose.
Absolutely.
I don't know who it is. I can't tell you if it's a man or a woman, but if you're a Boulder resident, I would keep your babies close to you. Someone is out there.
Thus far in our examination of the Ramsey case, we've looked at one of the most idiosyncratic aspects of this case, which is this idea of a mother who participated in pageants. And as you've just heard, it was the most wonderful time of Patsy's life. Being the center of attention, dressing up, performing to a crowd, being appreciated, and then being crowned the most beautiful of them all. And then doing the same thing with her daughter, doing the same thing with her home, doing the same thing with Christmas. Think about the pageantry of Christmas. And think about this word pageant. What does it mean? A pageant is a large-scale, colorful show or procession that can be theatrical, ceremonial, or competitive. Pageants are used to express a person's beliefs, but I think pageantry can also be used to manipulate beliefs. Think about the Ramsey Christmas as a large-scale, over-the-top, colorful show with lights, trees everywhere, candy canes, Santa on a sled, and a huge pile of Christmas gifts. Think about that as a kind of a charade for little children, right? And of course, it's all meant in a positive way, but it's nevertheless fooling, something that is meant to distort and to provide a fake kind of reality for little children, right? And it's something that lots of people do, lots of people participate in. But why is it done? Well, it's done for the greater good because it's a lot of fun, because of the spirit of Christmas. Well, what happens if the spirit of Christmas is interrupted and you're a pageant queen and you've got this really strong desire to keep everything going, to keep the show on the road? Now think about it, there are different kinds of pageants. There's a theatrical pageant that includes music, a loosely defined drama. There can be a ceremonial pageant. Think about the pageantry of the Oscars. There can be a competitive pageant, contests where the beauty of competitors is judged. Think about even the competitive pageantry of the Olympic Games. But what about a crime scene? Can that also be a pageant? Does a crime scene also involve performances and staging and wordplay? Well, if it includes a fictional drama, and this one involves one of the most melodramatic we've ever seen in terms of this ridiculous ransom note, then the answer is absolutely, a crime scene can be conducted like a pageant.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Now, I did say I wanted to go into Patsy's backstory in a little bit more detail, and we're going to be doing that right here. So, can there be pageantry in words? Yes. Think about Christmas cards. Flowery, filled with warm and fuzzy sentiments, decorated on the outside, filled with some message on the inside. Think about Christmas gifts in the same way. They have this flowery wrapping on the outside. Inside is the thing that you want. And often the real writer disguises the identity behind cards and, gifts. And all of this is delivered through the chimney, Intruder style, by Santa. But even though you have bought this gift, you don't sign it with your name. You write someone else's name. Think about all of that as a kind of practice for the mechanics of this crime scene. Think about any pageant and think about how much a pageant is about questions and elegant answers and standing in front of a crowd and performing in front of them, saying the right things, hitting the right notes. Patsy's speciality when she did pageants was in word dramas. On August the 1st, 1998, slap bang in the middle of the storm that was brewing, which would determine the Ramseys' fate, and just 1 month before a grand jury investigation was officially announced, this book, full of pro-Patsy apologia, conveniently popped out of the ether. JonBenet's Mother, The Tragedy and the Truth by Linda Edison McLean. And I'll provide a link to this. Anyone can read this book. It's available online. And I want to take you to chapter 3, Miss West Virginia. Quote, I didn't see Patsy too often during her first year of college. I did run into her from time to time because her sister Pam was a member of our speech team. Pam and Mrs. Paul would keep me up to date on Patsy's college life. She, meaning Patsy, was majoring in journalism, had joined a sorority and was enjoying college life as she had enjoyed every stage of her life thus far. Patsy won the Miss West Virginia pageant held in June 1977. She had just finished her last final exam of the semester and had to hurry home just in time for the event. For her talent presentation, she used a scene from a play called The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. This was the same scene she had performed to win national honors on our high school forensics team. In oral interpretation, the student takes a scene from a story or play and interprets it for the audience. There are no costumes, no props, no theatrical makeup, and this is so important. The speaker talks in a different voice for each character. In The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, 2 students impersonate their teacher in a bogus letter, actually a series of bogus letters, but one of them includes the misspelling of possession, the same thing we see in the ransom note. At one point, Rose says out loud, "Oh dear, I can't remember how you spell possession. Are there 2 S's or..." Now, those who know me know I often use the term intertextuality. Well, this is classic intertextuality. Intertextuality is basically the complex interrelationship between a text and other texts, a fabric and other fabrics. It's the connections between different works of literature and art, or the connections between one case and another, certainly the way that I apply it. Now, what happens when we try to connect the patterns of pageants that we see in beauty pageants and the pageantry of Christmas with the pageantry of a crime scene, and also what is the ground zero of the pageantry here? Well, it is the ransom note. And are we going to see any patterns between the pageantry of the ransom note and the pageantry of the writing within it? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the many of you who have subscribed. Thank you to everyone who have kindly hit the thanks button. If you still haven't, now's your chance. And let's get started. So what is the one word in the Ramsey ransom note that gives the game away? Well, it's this one, hence. At the top of page 2, we see it loud and clear in black and white. And hence. If we want to dumb down our investigation, perhaps we need to, we could ask a simple question. Is it more likely and hence came from the Ramseys or from an intruder? I'm not asking, is it more likely whether and hence came from Patsy? I'm talking about from the Ramseys, from the Ramsey family, or from an intruder. And so let's go through the Ramsey family one by one. Patsy Ramsey used the term in her Christmas 1997 newsletter. Burke used the word hence during his 2016 interview with Dr. Phil, on camera.
Why it happened, and I think I felt a little awkward talking about it, and I think it was just something that I thought everyone knew. Awkward talking about it, and
did you know that John used the word hence in an interview with Newseum way back in 2000?
And your job is to prove you're not guilty. And that's backwards.
Yeah, how do you prove you're not guilty?
Well, if you're innocent, theoretically, it's quite easy. But in any event, I'm afraid I can't play you the audio where John says these words. We've got to take the transcript at face value. But it does apparently come from this interview with Newseum. Let's have a look at the transcript. John Ramsey says, the process of ongoing case, because it biases the case one way or the other, it's not true in our country. And in fact, it's gotten, my belief is that one of the things we need to look at as a society is that this is a problem where a television program can try, as we were tried on television, you got to realize we're never ever, and then he laughs, he says, been named as a suspect. That's really the first step in it. In the process for the police, they name you as a suspect, then you're indicted. It takes a little bit of evidence to indict. It takes a lot of evidence to convict. We've never, ever been named as a suspect. In the media, we've just been tried, convicted, charged, tried, convicted, and it's over. And that's a problem for our system because the justice system can't work properly with that going on around it. A detective told me that, an old, retired, very experienced detective, he said, the problem with this case was so much media attention. The detectives weren't allowed to do their job. And in any event, it's within all of this waffle, lots and lots of talking, where John is really getting into his stride, that he happens to say, and hence. I also want to jump into another little section where John is asked quite an interesting question by the moderator. It is, if you ever to be prosecuted, would you testify on your own behalf for JonBenet's murder? And look at the answer that John gives. Oh, sure. We asked to testify before the grand jury and we were never called. We've never been concerned about a trial. I mean, we don't want to go through that horrible disgrace. Well, I believe that. But we've never been afraid of the outcome. It would be a massacre. Now, this is the important part. And the good news is a grand jury looked at a one-sided presentation for 13 months and said no. Is that true? Is the one-sided presentation part of it true? Is it also true that they said no? And he says it takes about that much evidence, probably showing a small little amount with his fingers, to indict someone, you know. Would we want to go through that horrible embarrassment? No. Would we? Sure. Because we know the outcome. It would be, in fact, I've said I'd love to have it televised if they ever did that. I'd love for the public to see what's been done to us. And isn't that exactly what John has done? His wish has come true. He's shown the public what has been done to them. Not to JonBenet, to him, to Patsy. Now, let's come back to the original question. Is it more likely that and hence came from the Ramseys or from an intruder? I've shown you instances where Burke has used that term, Patsy's used that term, John's used that term. All three people from that family have used that term. So in a way, it's making the likelihood that the ransom note came from inside the house, just in terms of this word, and I know it is quite a narrow test, 3 times more likely just based on this narrow test. But then let's apply that test to an intruder. Why is it that certain people, Patsy's friend Judith Phillips, the housekeeper, seem to alternately remember words from the ransom note out of Patsy's own handwriting and locution? Look at these references to hence from Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. Local freelance writer Frank Kaufman mentioned to Patsy's one-time friend Judith Phillips, she was a photographer, whom he had met through Jeff Shapiro, the phrase and hence in the Christmas message. Phillips remembered that and hence appeared in the ransom note too. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence. Phillips told Steve Thomas about the similarities they'd seen, and Kaufman told Lou Smith. So this escalated to such a point that Judith Phillips, Patsy's friend, told a detective, and the journalist told another detective, Lou Smith. And look at how Lou Smith handles it. He said it was a good find, and he agreed with Kaufman that the writer of the ransom note was educated and seemed too sophisticated to be a typical criminal. It sounded more like someone with business experience who is in the habit of writing. And so how does he then end up with Michael Helgoth? I think he worked in a scrapyard. And Lou Smith made a big deal out of Michael Helgoth. You know, he had high-tech boots. He seemed to own a stun gun, but he definitely wasn't educated. Do you think Michael Helgoth wrote and hence? And John also has his own set of handy aphorisms when you hear John talk. But then, do you remember he wrote on the one notepad before handing it to the police, "Now is the time for all good men"? Would that be words that they used in the office when they tested out secretaries and other skills at Access Graphics, perhaps to measure typing speeds? Why and how would John know about that particular statement? I just think it's interesting to ask that question. But the bottom line isn't whether Patsy wrote the and hence. The bottom line is whether the Ramsey ransom note was more likely written by one of the Ramseys or an intruder. I mean, it's a kind of a very interesting analogy to who wrote the ransom note, a Ramsey or an intruder, as an analogy for who killed JonBenet, a Ramsey or an intruder. And this is where Lou Smith's parochial view of the case shoots itself in the foot. Has any intruder contender, Santa, Oliva, Carr, the housekeeper, ever been accused of using a similarly pretentious lexicon as Patsy? Attaché, JonBenet, and hence. Has anyone else been accused of feeding themselves the same diet you see in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which is pineapples and cream? And isn't this what sets Patsy apart, along with the ransom note, from the run-of-the-mill contenders for the intruder authors of the ransom note? What sets her apart? What sets the ransom note apart? What sets this crime apart? The pageantry. And what is the one word that gives the game away, that gives away the pageantry, that gives away the true author of this pageantry? Well, isn't it and hence? Isn't it hence? And hence is a word that means for this reason, as a consequence, in consequence, consequently, thus, as a result, because of that, that being the case, ergo, accordingly. And hence, doesn't this word hence give the game away? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.